Welcome, junior families. We're the college counseling team at HPA. My name's Andrew Kelsey, and I've been here about 30 years. I have a son who's a seventh grader named Dylan. He's taller than me now, which is very strange. Um, I definitely feel that we have kind of the best job on campus working with your students and getting to know families and helping you guys through this journey. It's super satisfying and look forward to getting to know everybody.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Cindy Montgomery. I have been anticipating this junior parent night with a mix of emotions for many years. This is my first and only year that I will ever be a junior parent as well. I see lots of friends in the chat here in the room, many of whom I've known since kindergarten. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to be in it right with all of you and here to support you as well. And I've been here, I've been at HPA since 2006. I started, Andrew and I are marking our 20th year since we started working together. And I'm so excited to have an opportunity to work with your children in the coming year.
And I get to be Zach's counselor.
Lucky me. He loves his Uncle Kelsey.
And hi, I'm Jane Quayle. I'm the assistant in the office. I've worked with Andrew and Cindy for the better part of 9 years now. I'm also a parent of a junior, and I will get to do this again because I also have an eighth grader. Um, and just so we all are aware, this is being recorded and it will go out to families in the next couple days.
Great.
So we'll
Thanks.
go ahead. Thanks, Jane. We'll go ahead and get started. This is an overview of tonight's program. We're going to start by showing you the spring semester for juniors. Most of our juniors were able to meet with us once in the first semester. Everybody took the PSAT. Lots of juniors came to college presentations and college visits. But it's kind of the fall is kind of light. And then the spring semester is really when we kick off our program. So these are some of the things that we'll do, and we'll go through them. Number two, we're going to talk about standardized testing because we do some of that this spring. And then we're going to show you guys three ways that you can really help support us and support your children. The first is using SCORE, which is our platform for college counseling. And the second is planning ahead. So that means spring vacation, summer vacation, and looking a little bit at the senior year to help make that smooth for everybody. And then the last is taking the lead on financial aid and cost-based college lists. And we'll talk about that at the end of our presentation tonight.
Okay. This is just a quick, we call it our roadmap to kind of understand the different ways that we use the school schedule to meet with your students. So there's kind of three categories that we use. So one of them is the advisory system. So every student meets weekly with their advisor, and we funnel some of our programming through that advisory system to have students work on assignments. For example, they may work on an input form or register for the upcoming college fair. So we use advisory for those small group things. We also use advisory for things that aren't really easy to do in a large group, like starting the common application and starting making their own application. So we'll meet individually with advisories to do those types of tasks. For larger messages that are appropriate for an audience, we'll use class meetings. So all junior class meetings are going to take place in GPAC, the Gates Performing Arts Center, this spring. And we do college knowledge pieces at the beginning of all those class meetings. We already have them scheduled out through spring break. We'll teach your students something about applying to college. Some will be hands-on, some will be more big picture in terms of types of colleges or financial aid or different aspects of the application process. And then finally, we have individual meetings. We've already started those. Most of your students have met with us at least once by now, and we're starting the second round. If some students weren't able to get in the first semester, they're having their first ones now, and we'll have their second one in the next month. And then we have a third one again in the spring. So all the juniors will meet individually with either Mr. Kelsey or with Andrew or I this semester. And those meetings tend to be about 30 minutes each. So we try to approach the process from these three different layers: large group, small group, and individual, hoping that with that, the students get the information and the support they need.
And then we tucked in standardized testing because this semester our students will take the SAT in March, all juniors, ACT in April, and then complete the year with AP exams if they're in AP courses.
Mm-hmm. And Kelsey, I'm realizing that we probably should have put another little block in here called College Fair, because HPA is fortunate to be hosting the West Hawaii College Fair this spring. It'll be right here on campus during the school day, so all our students can just walk down during the school day. There'll be assigned slots. Families are welcome. It's going to be 10 to 12 on April 15th. So if you'd like to also join, you're welcome. And we'll be giving lots of information about the College Fair between now and then.
So Cindy mentioned those class meetings or workshops. These are some examples of how workshops tie to advisories. In the first workshop of the second semester in January, we talk about the different types of colleges and universities. So that's, liberal arts colleges, private universities, public universities, explaining the differences. And then we go into types of applications. For example, early decision, early action, restrictive early action, rolling and regular. And then we talk about what the common application is. And for those of you guys who might not know, over 1,000 universities in America and around the world use the common application. It's a big time saver for students. And then they'll go ahead and in their advisory, they'll actually work on beginning the common application with us. And then Cindy, maybe you can do workshop two. And we have one family that has their mic on.
The second workshop, we go into some bigger picture things as we approach spring break. So we talk about standardized testing. All students here at HPA will be taking the SAT. They'll be taking the SAT on March 2nd, all juniors, and the ACT on April 7th. So we talk them through that and how to prepare and what those scores mean and how they may play into their application process or they may not. We talk about using spring and summer breaks to their advantage in terms of maybe internships or working on college applications, paid work, looking at summer programs. Many of those need to actually be applied to now or in the spring break period. So we start talking about that pretty early on in the spring semester. And then we also start planting the seed about senior year in terms of classes and then potential capstone topics they may wish to cover.
And in our third workshop, we dig a little deeper into using SCORE, that platform that college counseling uses for most things. We do our college search. We build a balance list that we'll talk about later this evening. And then we also work on input forms and teacher recommendations. And then finally, we finish up the semester with introducing the college essay, talking about financial aid and scholarship. And then we have a panel of current seniors giving advice on the college search and application process. Last week, was it just last week? We had young alumni come and talk to our juniors about what life is like in college and making that transition. And then we also do a current senior panel for them as well. This is just a kind of a visual example of one of our activities where we're showing students and they're writing on this page to help kind of list the different criteria in terms of importance to them. So when students choose schools, they use various filters. Maybe it's athletics, maybe it's geographic location, maybe it's school's reputation or major or financial aid. And we want them to think about those different criteria to help match the best school with them And so one of these things is ranking these things in order of importance. So this is just a little visual of a quick activity we do with them.
Okay, so we talked a little bit, I mentioned earlier about the things that we have 3 meetings with the students, and these are the types of topics that we're going to cover in individual college meetings. So a lot of it is really self-reflection, kind of talking about with the student about the things that are important to them. Often thinking about college can feel super intimidating, even scary for kids because it makes them focus on the idea that they're going to eventually be leaving home and they won't be here. And some of them aren't quite ready to think big picture about or to think about that part of the process. But when you get them talking big picture about what their interests are, what are the no-go areas, what do they not want to study, or where do they not want to live, what lifestyle choices are important to them, do they want to be near family, all those things, usually they open up pretty quickly and they can self-reflect on what's important to them. And that's a great place to start with them and not with colleges because they don't know colleges yet, but they have a pretty good idea of themselves. So then from there, we build a college list and we suggest schools, and SCORE will show you how that works. And then help them with requesting 2 letters of recommendation this year that will be used for college. We help them completing input forms that we'll go over, and those forms help us and their teachers write strong letters of recommendation that will be used for college. And then finally, we talk about the academic planning piece for their senior year, including capstone, of course, and whether testing will be part of their process. And if so, make a plan in terms of their testing plan, when they'll take it, if they're going to be taking any kind of test prep and those types of things. So these are things that are often or always covered in our meetings.
And this slide is talking about testing this semester. There, the landscape has changed a lot with the SAT and ACT. So Cindy and I wanted to kind of introduce that to families that might not be aware of these changes. There are 4 types of test situations in college. One is test optional, which means a student can choose to send their scores if they like them or choose to withhold their scores. And colleges across the country, most of them are test optional now. The second is test blind, which many families are surprised to hear. But these are schools that will not accept test scores even if the student wants to send them. So some test blind schools that are most noteworthy would be the University of California system. So UC Berkeley, UCLA, San Diego, Irvine, Santa Cruz, all of those schools are test blind and they do not use test scores at all. The third is test required. So this is old school. And we're seeing more selective schools returning to requiring tests, but they right now are in the minority. And then the fourth, which is kind of rare, is test flexible, where a student might be able to use AP scores instead of SAT or ACT to satisfy a test requirement. One thing that we've noticed in recent years is that AP scores have become more important because schools are seeing students choose to be test optional, but then they're seeing that the student is enrolled in AP scores, so they are curious if those scores are strong. Just kind of a recent sort of change in the landscape there.
Mhm. Right before this presentation, Andrew and I just quickly looked up to see about what percentage of schools are test optional, and still over 80% of schools are remaining test optional. It's important to keep changing because that is shifting a bit, as Andrew mentioned, but rest assured there are still thousands of schools that are excellent schools out there that are still test optional. So just good to know that that can be part of your child's process if you wish it to be. Here are the dates. I just put them in the chat too. But as part of our program, because we feel it's important for students to know where their strengths are with tests and whether it's going to be part of their process as they move forward, we have all juniors take the SAT here during the school day, and that will be March 2nd this year, and take the ACT also during the school year. That'll be right after spring break or shortly after on April 7th. Those tests start when the normal school day will start. The students are registered and paid for by our office, so they just show up like a normal school day. All tests are now computer based, so they'll be getting lots of information about compatibility on their computer, make sure they bring a charged computer, all those things. And that'll also be in the All School Bulletin weekly. And then those scores will come back by late spring, and all students will have a sense of which test, if either, is the one they're likely going to move forward with for their college applications. The reason we do both is that colleges accept either interchangeably. And although the tests are actually quite different, so we like students to have the chance to see which one might work best with their learning style. So if you want to take advantage also of a boot camp that we'll have coming up, we partner with Tutors Across America because they have a very affordable weekend boot camp that's virtual. I believe it's $149 for families, $149. Which in the scheme of testing is pretty affordable. And these are the dates, and it's also in the All School Bulletin. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to us.
And here we're giving you three great ways that we can use your help. So the first is using SCORE, and that's encouraging your students to finish all the assignments. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And the second is completing the parent guardian input form. This is sort of a brag sheet where you can tell us about your child's background, achievements, things that you're proud of, parts of their character and personality. And we find these to be super helpful. The more detailed, the better. Cindy and I read them, and we're looking for the students' life story to help shine a positive light on them. And a lot of times, your input is very, very valuable and helpful. Also, in SCORE, we'll show you how you can add schools to the suggested column for students. So you can go into SCORE and suggest schools for your student to consider.
A second way that is so helpful for parents to get involved, because I think all of us have the process in our minds and are trying to figure out how we can be helpful, is really helping with this big planning piece. There's a lot of details and deadlines that come with the process of applying to college. And so parents can play a huge role in that. You can be now having discussions about looking ahead in senior year. We mentioned capstone again, because sometimes that can end up being a pretty big piece of senior year if there hasn't been a little bit of forethought or maybe even some energy put into it during the summer before senior year. So already starting to talk big picture ideas about that. And because parents are usually the one that drive family travel, using spring break and summer break productively in whatever that looks like for you. Often that can mean visiting colleges, and you can start looking ahead already. And if you're going to be in an area visiting family, maybe trying to see a few colleges. And we'll talk a little bit more about that process later in the slide. The final way that's really helpful to really have honest discussions with your kids about the financial aid of college. It is financial side of college. It is incredibly expensive, more and more so all the time. And I think having honest discussions about what falls within your family's level of affordability is super helpful from the beginning, and gives them an idea of the kinds of colleges they should have maybe in their safety realm to round out their list. It also is helpful for us in terms of creating a list with affordability in mind, if that's a big part of your process. So feel free to share that with us, and we will certainly take that into consideration as we're list making with your student. It's also completing the FAFSA and the CSS profile, which is a private school extra form in addition to the FAFSA, require parent input. That's just how it is. You need to fill them out and put your tax returns in. So that's a huge way to help your student. And then finally, the scholarship search. If you want to go in and start doing some scholarship searches or helping your students stay on track with different scholarships, that would be greatly appreciated by your children, I'm sure.
Okay, so the next few slides show you SCORE. This afternoon, we sent a re-invite to all parents, all junior parents for SCORE. So if you look in your email, you should see an invitation. If you've already been in SCORE, some of this will be review. When your student logs on, our model student here is Albert Einstein. When you come in, you'll see that the landing page says good morning or good afternoon or good evening, and then it shows assignments. So in the fall, our juniors had just a handful of assignments, pretty easy. In the spring, they have about 16 assignments, and we're going to show you a few of them. And this is a way for the students and families to know that they're on track. When you complete an assignment, you mark it as complete. And Cindy and I can see that, and we can bug students, encourage them, bug them to get their assignments done. And you can help us with that too. So this is an example of what the assignments look like. Completing a future college survey, thinking about their capstone, creating their common application and starting to work on it. And then we put a little green arrow, complete the parent guardian input form. That's what I was talking about earlier. It really does help us. All of our students also write an input form where they talk about what's important to them, what they value, what makes them happy, favorite classes, extracurricular activities, and so on. And we're going to read that to find the best information to use in our counselor recommendation letters. This page is the My College page in SCORE. And this is kind of complicated, but it's actually a lot of fun when you get into it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. And so parents can suggest schools for their student and add them. Cindy and I suggest schools. And then the students can move the schools to the left, not interested, and we can see those schools, or they can move them to the right, following, which means they're interested. In their senior year, they move them further to the right to applying and then finally applied. And when schools are added into SCORE, it will show the student, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. It'll show the student if that school is considered a far reach. Let me go through the levels really quickly. A far reach, a level, a likely, or a very likely. And we want our students to have schools in each category so it becomes a very balanced list. And they don't have to have anxiety because they know that they've identified schools that are easier to get into, that are likely, that are level for them. And then they're also challenging themselves by applying to reach and far reach schools as well. So that's kind of what SCORE works with families, students, and counselors to help create. So when we look at Albert, you can see some of these schools are being identified by SCORE using usually like 100,000 applications. And we'll talk about this some more. But right now, this is not holistic admissions. It's not looking at activities, leadership, background, all of that. It's mostly GPA and test score, but it gives you a quick look at how hard these schools are, and students get an idea of how challenging it might be for them. It also lists the average SAT scores. And as we mentioned about test optional, one thing about this rubric is that a lot of our students will apply to these schools test optional. And so their chances of being admitted go up since they're not using a score that would be low for that school, if that makes sense. So some of this rubric's a little bit off, but it's still very helpful.
The great thing, could you just go back for a second, Kels? I was going to mention that the great thing about this too is the names of all these colleges are actually links that go directly to a View College page that's super robust. It has pictures of the school and often a walking tour, talks about majors, school size, their admissions policies and deadlines and likelihood of admission in terms of percentages. So there's so much information that's easily accessible once a school is in this list here that SCORE provides. So it's a really fun way to sort of window shop colleges in the beginning. So take advantage of that. You don't have to go to websites on your own. It's all right here, one-stop shopping. So thanks, Kat.
Cindy, along those lines, there's a search engine built into SCORE. So you can say, well, we're going to be going to New England. So you can choose Vermont, New Hampshire as a geographic region, and SCORE will show all the schools in that area. And then you can add other filters like selectivity or major or size, and it'll make that list smaller. And then you or your student just click follow. All of those schools are automatically added to this list. And so that's kind of how you can use the search engine in SCORE to help build this working list.
Great. So SCORE generates a college list score using an A through F scale. And we just wanted to help you kind of understand how that's generated. So it uses the following rubric. So it's looking for two reach or far reach schools, three level schools, which, a student would have a pretty good chance of getting into, but it wouldn't be considered a likely or very likely. So here's the rubric: two reach, three level, and four likely. Many of our students will exceed these numbers in certain categories, but to know that that's what the scale is being generated on, again, using the information that is in SCORE. So it's definitely not perfect science. Andrew mentioned it's not holistic. It's not looking at the letters of rec or the leadership or the special ways that students contribute, but it is a pretty good way to get a sense of the selectivity of a school and how your particular student may fall into that. And if you have any questions, let us know. But if a student is set on a single school that falls into their likely range, that would and it will generate a score that isn't high based on that, simply because they have only one school that falls into the likely range. So we can navigate that case by case, but we wanted you to know how the score was generated, so if you're looking at it, you have a better understanding.
Yeah, sometimes, not too often, but students are frustrated because they'll see a low grade, but their plan is perfect and it's an ideal college plan. And so we talk through that. We can override the grade, but usually they say, I get it. I need one more level school and my grade will go up, or I have to add, a couple more likely, even though I already have a slam dunk. It's if I think usually when the students understand how the grade is generated and it's generated by score, they're more understanding that this is really a way to encourage them to look a little further, to consider more schools, to expand their research. And sometimes they end up discovering a school that they never would have thought of, and it's a likelier level or a reach school, and they end up going to that school. But SCORE pushed them to think beyond like where they're at, which is a really great way to think of it. This next slide, we want to talk about this because we're going to tie it back into SCORE. There's a number of different ways to apply to college. Some of it is due to timing, and some is due to the idea of it being binding, like if you're admitted, you must go to that school. And some of it is tied to admit rates associated with these different plans. So Cindy and I will go back and forth on this. The first is early action, usually in November, and the students usually find out their result before winter break. This is non-binding. You don't have to go to any of your early action schools, and you can apply to as many as you like. We love early action. It encourages students to get started early, and they're not required to commit to any school, and they have all year to think about it.
Hmm. And it's really nice to get some positive news before the winter break, which early action allows. And so does the next one, which is early decision. So, early decision, you also apply usually by November 1st. That's the most common early decision deadline. But the big differential here, differentiating quality is that you have to go if you get in. So, early decision requires us as the counselor, the parents, and the student to sign a contract saying that they understand, if admitted, they will withdraw all other applications and they will attend that university or college. So early decision, we'll show you in a bit, can be a powerful kind of strategy admissions tool, but has to be taken quite seriously, and that the student would have to love that college over all others and be happy to attend. And also, a big part of it is the family would have to be aware of what your financial aid would be if you were to get accepted, because it doesn't allow you to compare financial aid packages with other schools. If you're considering going early decision, we're happy to talk you through based on your own family situation.
And for some students, you're only allowed to apply to one early decision school, but you could apply to early decision schools and early action schools. The trick there is if you get into your early decision school, you have to cancel all your early action school applications because you've committed to that early decision school. Our next one, super fun and even more confusing, is called restrictive early action. This is just a handful of schools, places like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, not too many schools, but this is not binding. So you apply in November, you don't have to you don't have to go to the school, but it prevents you from applying to any other early decision or early action schools. You can only apply to this school. And so that's why it's restrictive. Yeah, and happy to talk more about that one as well. Early decision 2 is the same as early decision 1. It's in January. Again, it's binding. You have to go if you're admitted. This can be a really great plan. Sometimes students need more time to think, or they want to bring up their grades with their senior grades, and they know that they want to commit to a school and have that strength of early decision. And then some of our students that applied maybe early decision or restrictive early action in November and didn't reach their goal of admissions will apply to the second round of early decision in January. And that can work out really well for lots of students.
And finally, just regular admission, which might be what many of us remember from when we were going through this, which is deadlines typically fall in January. Some can be a little later than that. And you apply with your first semester grades from senior year included, and you'll find out your acceptance. You'll find out if you've been accepted usually by March, right about spring break. And you have until May 1st to make your decision.
And we have one family, if you could turn off your mic, please. Thank you. Okay, and then since we talked about that, we want to show you how powerful this can be. With Albert, when he looks at Boston College, this is just Albert. You can see how these different rounds could impact his admission chances. So if he applied regular decision to BC, his admit rate based on about 100,000 application outcomes is 32%. If he chose early decision, it doubles to 64%. So it goes from a reach school to a likely school. This is just Albert's case, right? So that's incredibly powerful. Why would it not be a good idea? That binding piece could prevent Albert from wanting to follow an early decision path, right? It's a big commitment. Also, Albert might feel that he needs more time to write better essays, to get stronger recommendations, to have more time with his teachers. And so you want to think long and hard about that early decision piece because your application might be stronger later, but the admit rate definitely makes you think that it would be a good idea if everything else is in place to consider early decision. And then the reason why we wanted to share this with you is if Albert did want to wait and have a stronger application, the early decision 2 round, which is January, which gives him a lot more time, is 61%. So only 3% less, but maybe he puts together a much better application with his senior grades and other components.
Andrew mentioned this a little bit earlier, but parents can also identify new colleges to add if you know some parameters that you're looking for your student by going to this Discover tab. And it's a really great, it's pretty robust. You can put in all sorts of parameters in terms of geography and major and different lifestyle things, and it'll generate a list. And you can, if you like it, you can add it by pressing on the Follow tab that Andrew mentioned.
Oh, and one other thing, that list for Boston College didn't have early action. Some schools have an early action round and an early decision round. And so families often will be like, well, we're not in a position to choose early decision, but we can see that that early action round is much more comfortable and the admit rate goes up, maybe not as high as early decision, but goes up significantly as well. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about spring and summer vacation ideas. One is the idea of just travel. If you're going to a city or a location, visit some schools. So we picked San Francisco Bay Area. If you were in the Bay Area, you could visit a number of schools and they're different type institutions. So University of San Francisco, a private university right in the city. Berkeley, highly selective public university. Santa Clara, medium-sized private. Stanford University, UC Santa Cruz. And by visiting these different schools and locations, you can kind of help your student know what fits best for them, how it feels to be at a small school or a city school or a large public. And that can be really helpful. And Cindy, do you want to run through some of our advice for making a campus visit?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But the nice thing is that with technology, it's pretty easy to set up tours now. Almost without exception, the tours are at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So it's pretty feasible to fit in 2 tours in one day, but really hard to fit in much more than that. The college tour itself is given by a current student, but typically right before or right after that college tour is what's called an admissions info session. So we really recommend that you do both because the information you get from a current student can often be very different from what you're going to get from an admissions representative who works at the school. So it's nice to get both takes on the school, and also the type of data and information you get at the admission session can really help you in terms of planning and know certain details that you might not be able to get from a student. The You can go online to schedule those tours. A tip for maybe this is our next slide, Kels, but we have some general tips for when you are touring college. One is not only to just do two, but to make sure that you're taking notes. Andrew and I have been on hundreds of college tours, and wouldn't believe you think that the tour is so specific and so compelling. You're like, I'm going to remember all this, and then 3 tours later, and it's all blurring together. So our advice is when you leave that campus, and if you're traveling as a family, parents have their own notebook. Each of you have your own notebook to write down things that stood out to you, and things that were maybe you need to get more information on, things you loved, questions you have, maybe impressions. And then you can share them later. But you might be surprised that you can all walk away from that same tour and have quite different impressions and memories of it. So it's really good to kind of keep it to yourself, not try to jade the other person, let everyone write down their thoughts and ideas. And then at the end of the day, you can start to share and see or talk about the lens through which you saw that college and how you think it may or may not fit. What else, Kels? Anything else you can think of to add
No,
in
I think
there?
that's great. If you're not able to visit schools, when you're on a campus, especially if there's students on the campus, you get a vibe that's really telling. This is my place. These are my people. You feel all of that energy, which is really uh, it's hard to match, but for a lot of us, we're far away from these places. And so going online and taking virtual tours, listening to student panels, that's a close second. But I think that trying to get the experience of what it's like on these campuses can be so valuable. So we encourage it during spring break or summer. One thing, some of our families, because of timing and cost and various factors, they might not be able to do it before the senior year, but then after maybe winter break or when they hear the results from their schools, they'll choose their top schools and go visit them. And we just hear so many times that students had an idea about a school, and then when they went there, it was either confirmed or they were more excited about the school or disappointed. So getting a chance to be on campuses is highly recommended if it's possible. And then this slide is just some other ideas that are really useful. So I'll just go through them really quick. During spring and summer, working on the college list, writing drafts of college essays, doing test prep, maybe taking a college class online or on campus. And if your student is able to take a summer class at a college, they can know what that city environment or that small college town environment feels like. They can also visit other colleges in the area before or afterwards. And if that class that they're taking is for college credit, they give college counseling the transcript for that summer course, and we will send it along with the HPA transcript showing that they have completed college credit at such and such school. So that's a really valuable experience for some students. Working ahead on their capstones. Capstones at HPA are a big deal, but if students wait too long, they can't really leverage it for their college application. So if they start thinking now about their capstone and work on it during the breaks and summer, then in their senior fall, they can have their capstone further along and they can actually include what they're doing in their applications. Paid work is highly respected by colleges. Volunteering, the same. If your student is an athlete, the summer is a big time to work on athletic recruiting, going to different tournaments and so forth. And then other things, pursuing their interests in travel, music, writing, art. Um, Colleges are very curious, and they ask questions to find out how students use their time that's not school related, that's during vacations. So how they choose to use their free time. And then one tip that we have, if your student is thinking about taking APs, being able in the summertime to work ahead in some of those APs means that they can ensure that they get good grades the first quarter of senior year. So for example, maybe a student is going to take AP Physics. If they can talk to the teacher and work in the textbook in AP Physics and do like the first quarter of the class during summer, then when they're actually doing that first quarter as a senior, they're reviewing everything that they exposed themselves to during the summer, and it can make the class much easier. They can get a better grade and maybe spend more time on some other classes, right? So working ahead on senior classes is a great tip.
So the very last part of our presentation, which we'll move through pretty quickly, is we're going to just talk about the financial piece of college because we know it's relevant to so many families. So we'll move through this as quickly as we can because a lot of this will be talked about in our individual student and family meetings. Okay, so there are three or four kind of big ways to approach the affordability of college and to get money for college. So one is need-based aid. So this is what you hear about the most. That's the FAFSA, the federal for U.S. citizens. They fill out the federal application for the free application for federal student aid, and it will generate something called an SAI, and that's basically what they think your family can contribute to your student's education annually. And based on that, there'll be some need-based financial aid that is generated. The next type is merit aid, and this is our favorite because unlike the FAFSA, which tends to have loan packages as the main part of the aid, merit-based aid is free money. We love this. This is typically what is going to come directly from the college themselves. They'll send an acceptance letter to a student, and with that will be a merit-based package that is trying to entice the student to come. So it's grants and scholarships directly from the university themselves. Often this doesn't need to be applied for separately. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. It's just part of the application consideration, and it will come with the student's acceptance letter. A third type is outside scholarships, and we work with students on this. And anytime we get one, we put it in their score account, and students can look at these and apply separately to private organizations that provide scholarships. And then finally, what Andrew and I work really closely with students and families on is just building a cost-aware college list. And that comes with making sure that the balance of the students list is not only taking into consideration admissibility in terms of tests and letters of rec and other talents they bring, but also taking into account affordability. And we're going to go through that quickly with our pyramid that's going to come up and kind of show you how you might build a list based on that. And it might help explain also why some of the lists we've put on your child's suggested column have arrived there because we have affordability in mind.
This is the pyramid that Cindy mentioned. So if you think about building a pyramid, community colleges, which are very affordable, also offer some unique advantages. The classes are small. It's a great pathway to a four-year college. So maybe a student has a dream of going to UCLA and they're not able to do that right away. If they went to community college, they would save many tens of thousands, like $150,000 dollars, actually way more than that, taking their first 2 years at community college and then transferring into UCLA for their junior and senior year. So this is something that families should consider as an affordable option. But beyond that, there's some advantages with community college learning environments. The second level up from community college would be your in-state university. So for Hawaii residents, the University of Hawaii is a high quality institution and a very reasonable rate of a reasonable tuition rate.
Yep. And that would apply for if you're not from the state of Hawaii, that would be your in-state institution, or if you're an international family, often that's the national university in your home country. Those tend to be the most affordable options for students at the next level. The
Cindy,
third, the purple band. Oh, go
I
ahead,
want
Pam.
I wanted to mention we have these bullets on the side. Just a couple things a lot of families might not know about UH is that students can study for 1 year through the National Student Exchange Program on the US mainland at another university. All the credits transfer back and they still pay in-state tuition. And there are many study abroad programs through the University of Hawaii, and the students can study abroad, credits transfer back, and you're paying in-state tuition. So great value, and students can also have experiences through UH outside of Hawaii through National Student Exchange and also through study abroad.
The next level of affordability, many of you probably have heard of, is called the WUI institutions. WUI stands for Western Undergraduate Exchange. There are 16 states in the western part of the United States that participate in this program. If you are a resident of one of those states, you or your student has the potential to qualify for WUI tuition, which is in-state tuition plus 50%. So for example, if a school had a $10,000 in-state tuition and 30,000 out of state, your student with the WUI would qualify for that 15,000 in-state. So it can be significant savings. This is often a great affordable plan for students who are residents of the western part of the United States, including Hawaii. So often we're going to put WUI schools in the list for families to consider.
And super popular schools, Colorado State, Oregon State, Washington State, and so on. The next group would be public state universities that are not WUI. So those are just schools across the country that do not participate in the WUI program.
And then the very top tier is private colleges. This one is an interesting one because this one, the sticker price is by far the most, it can be staggering almost. These are the ones that are in the $80,000 and $90,000 per year range. But what we want to say is that the sticker price versus actual cost that students pay is often quite different. So don't be intimidated by looking at these schools because the bulk of merit aid that we see for our students, that free money that students get from institutions themselves when they're accepted, comes from private colleges. So often we'll encourage students to look at schools, and we can help explain on an individual basis how you might be able to elicit the most merit aid, but typically merit aid comes from schools that your student is strong for the average accepted student that's applying. So that is part of the list making piece that we talked about earlier, is putting those schools on as well.
So when you guys look at these lists and you're helping build them, if you are thinking cost aware, I want my list to be cost aware, then maybe a mix of private colleges, some WUI schools, an in-state university is really smart to do. And then we added something that every year becomes a little bit more popular, and that is international colleges and universities. Often way more affordable than American universities and colleges. So we have students attending school in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, the UK, and they are paying less. Japan, surprisingly, high quality, very affordable institutions. And we just have this slide because it's kind of exciting. Last year, we had a group of New Zealand schools come together and do a mini college fair at GPAC. Everybody loved it. Really different types of schools. Tuition is kind of 11,000 to 14,000. They had such a good time. They're coming back this year. Our tentative date is March 5th, and in the evening was the time that we did last year. So we're looking at that kind of same date for this year, and we'll send out information for that. But amazing idea to think of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and so on. One, to get affordability, also to give your student an international experience, just something to open up like horizons. This slide shows in Score. Score has so much functionality, and you really got to play around and dig, but you find so many cool things when you're in Score. So this is a student who's really targeted the state of Oregon. They want to be in Oregon. So if you look at these different schools, the student has Lane Community College, and this school is, let me see here, in state, it's only $5,000 for tuition. Out of state, it's listed at 11,000, but maybe through the WUI program, if they're part of that, it would be less. Next to them, we have Oregon State, which is a WUI school. So for a Hawaii student, that would not be 33,000. It would be more like $17,000. And that's what Cindy was talking about, in-state tuition plus about 50%. So an incredible deal for tuition. And then the University of Oregon, which does not participate in WUI, it jumps up to 40K out of state for a Hawaii student. And then the University of Portland, which is private, goes up to 54,000. Now, back to our pyramid, the University of Portland, even though it's the most expensive school, if you look at the very bottom, you'll see that the average student debt is 24,000, which puts it right in there with the other schools. And that's because the University of Portland is going to stack merit aid on top of need-based aid, and that $54,000 out-of-state cost will actually be less because of their generosity and endowment.
We have a great question in the chat that I might just bring up for everybody. We have a
Sure.
parent asking if the student is a resident of Hawaii, but the parents are not. Do they qualify for WUI?
That's a great question. Cindy, if you want to add to this, for some WUI schools, they definitely just look at the high school where you're graduating from. And I'm not sure if there might be some schools that dig a little deeper to see if you're from out of state. Having said that, a lot of our students who are in boarding or have parents, the parents might reside in another WUI state. So for example, if your residence is California or Oregon or Washington or Colorado, a lot of the Western United States, you are part of WUI too. Cindy, do you want to add to that? I've found that a lot of schools just use the graduating high school location to determine WUI. Have you found different?
I think it's good to check school by school. There is a part on the Common App that will ask if you're a boarder at the school, so they'll know um, if your parents reside in the state typically. So I would check case by case, but I think for many schools it may come into play where the parent owns a home or pays income tax. But again, I don't want to speak too broadly. I think it's definitely worth researching on a case by case basis.
And then, like I was saying, if you are from a Western state, you could be part of WUI even if you're not living in Hawaii. Okay.
Um, Finally, we were saying about applying outside. So there are so many search agents. Here's just a few of them that you can start. These all have a similar platform. A student goes in, they fill out like a profile of who they are and what they're interested in, where they grew up. There might be questions about background and all sorts of things. And based on that, the scholarship sites will match students to potential scholarships nationally and perhaps internationally, depending on their interest. And then the student will see, they'll get emails kind of showing them what they're eligible for, and they can choose to apply. So this is a wonderful way to support your students, have them fill out one of these outside search engines and see if they start to get some information and some interest in terms of scholarships that might fit them. And they may have a chance of getting some aid that way.
And like we said earlier, we encourage parents to maybe take the lead on this because the students are super busy with their senior classes, applying to college, and you can like find great scholarships for your kids. And then the more scholarships you apply for, the better. So almost looking at this as an activity to do, put in some time every week for applying to scholarships and stacking them all together. This is the best site for Hawaii students, and it's called Hawaii Community Foundation. It's a clearinghouse for all the scholarships available, not all, but almost all of the scholarships available in the state of Hawaii. And this becomes due in February of the student's senior year. I think um, the next slide that we wanted to mention that in SCORE, we put in the drive a lot of the scholarship information. So once you're in SCORE, you can go in the student's drive and see a lot of the websites linked for scholarships.
Okay, and that's all we got today for you. We just have these final tips for moving forward. And of course, we'll see and talk to you lots between now and the senior fall. But here we go. The first tip leading off is just have fun. And the background of all of this, and I know I have this on my mind, and Jane too, is next year is going to be our last year with our student living at home full time, most likely. And so just enjoy them, enjoy the process, keep it as light as you can while still holding them accountable. That's our number one tip is enjoy them and enjoy this process.
Next tip, don't make it be all about college. Sometimes our students say, my parents don't talk to me anymore except about college. So kind of pull back on that, have some dinners where it's not the topic. And, that's just really important for us all to keep that in perspective. Um, the next point is they really do care about your opinion. So when you share ideas with them and you encourage them and you're keeping it positive, they pay attention to us, right? And so we want to model like good behavior and a good attitude, and they know that we support them. So we have to keep doing that and doing that with intentionality.
Mhm. And that leads perfectly into the very last tip, this idea of love the list. So, the language that parents, because they so much don't want to disappoint you, the language that parents use around the college list can be so, so helpful. Just be mindful that you're talking about the safety schools, those likelies, um, and um, and very likelies with enthusiasm, just like you would be about a reach school, to make sure that no matter where your child lands in this landscape of schools that they're applying to, that they'll feel like you were proud of them, that everyone was on board with that being a good fit for the student. This can take some intentionality, like Andrew said, is really doing the research and feeling good about the schools that are on the list and for the right reason. And we can help a lot with that as well. So please reach out if you have any questions.
And then goes without saying, but we are here for your kids and we're here for you. So please reach out, let us know how we can be helpful. And we look forward to working with all you guys. And we will do another parent night at the very beginning of senior year that's really specific to the fall and how you can like best support us and your kids during that time. Thank you so much for joining us
So
tonight.
grateful you came tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much. We look forward to working